So I've noticed you lean a lot lately into relationship dynamics. What
Yeah.
have you noticed between almost counseling couples with their finances?
I do not know why, but they do not talk about their fucking money. Why don't they talk? No one talks to each other about their money. There's always a hidden debt we discover. Almost every episode, just a hidden debt. And they just don't talk about it. Or when they go to have the conversation, one becomes bickering and nagging towards the other person. And the other person becomes mute and never wants to participate in that conversation again. The communication around finance in this country, especially among couples, is horrendous. I don't get it. We've never had one couple on the show where the communication is not at least bad in some way.
Who spends more money, men or women?
On our show, I don't know the real answer, but on our show, it's been the dudes.
What are they spending it on?
They get their tool debt and they get their Ford and, you know, they get their manly toys.
They're
and,
OnlyFans.
yeah, they always have some truck in the back that they're gonna fix. They're gonna fix, you know. But there's a car payment on it still, even though it's not running.
So why do you think they're not talking? Is it the guy who just purely doesn't want to like involve his wife or girlfriend, fiance in his own finances? Are there shared
It always
finances?
becomes
Are
an
they
argument.
separate?
Becomes an argument every single time. Every single time. It always becomes a blame game, or they feel like it's a blame game. Like, we're calling out these purchases. What? You calling out this stuff that I'm buying? Oh, like it's all my fault? You think it's all my fault? It always becomes an argument. They don't know how to communicate it in a healthy way.
When you have couples on the show like that, though, what dynamics do you notice do not work? Like, can you tell if people are a good fit for each other or not?
Yeah, there's definitely the independent versus codependent people. I'm sure they can figure out in other aspects of marriage, but when one person wants their finances to be their finances and the other one wants to achieve these goals together, getting to retirement together, paying off these debts together, nope. And the comments are always like, we'll see a divorce follow up in 6 months, you know? It's like, well, when they're just not on that same page. I know finance isn't the leading cause of divorce in the country, but it's one of the major ones. And if one person just like, hey, this is my money, I'll bring in my money, I want to spend my money, you know? It's just like,
So what's your advice for couples?
definitely you need to go into the conversation about budgeting if it's your first time in a non-combative spirit. Not doing accusations of, oh, why'd you spend this much money on this toy? It should have been that. Let's document where the money was spent, not who spent it, and just what are the goals we want to do? What does it take to get there? And then budget for those goals equally.
Do you think a saver could live a happy life with a spender?
As long as they're willing to hit the goals together. I think so. If the spender wants to overtake and not hit any of the goals that the saver wants to get to, I think that's pretty hard. And if the saver's not willing to have any fun that the spender wants to do, then I think that's going to be hard as well. But if they're at least willing to set reasonable goals that they want to get to together, and they're both willing to make their compromises to get there, I think that's fair.
I've noticed mental health has came up in your show a lot. I mean, it's nearly every episode at this point.
Yeah.
What percentage would you just generally say that is part of the equation of these people's poor financial standings?
In terms of them bringing it up, 99%. In terms of it actually impacted them, probably closer to 25%. We've had people with real issues and we want to help them out. A lot of people that get back to the corner and they'll bring up some mental health thing. We have I'm very curious, 20 years when they look back in this period of culture, what they're going to say. A lot of it is on TikTok right now of the mental health and trauma Olympics. Has to be one upping each other. Has to be, here's my trauma, here's this thing. And then people get convinced that they have a trauma and a mental health thing. And it's just one upping. And lots of self-diagnosis. I've had way too many people that come on the show. They get backed into the corner of like, hey, you are wrong for this. This is what you need to do to fix it. And then they have some self-diagnosis that they never had through a mental health professional. I will respect it and I will take it seriously when you talk to a professional and they at least give an inkling that you might have something. Even if it's not an official diagnosis, that is when I will respect it. But if you are getting pushed back on for the first time in your life and you say, well, my anxiety is too high, it's like,
Is this all just because we become a little too soft and a little too like gentle with each other, that people just aren't getting the reality of the situation? Can't just be told, hey, get your act together. Like, that's not okay. That's not cool.
maybe that might be a part of it. I still really think just the way social media is, I'm on the cusp of Gen Z. You're technically Gen Z. A lot of that generation that we're involved in or on the cusp of is, it really is kind of the Olympics of just how bad are things. Like you have to have the worst trauma. You have to have the worst situation, and it gets the best engagement. You get rewarded for it on the platforms, and I don't know, that's a big part of it. And then people are convinced that they have a trauma. Like someone will tell a story and then like comments will flood and you're you know what, you've been through so much trauma and all this stuff. You're a victim and all this. And it's just, we get
Why do you
flooded
think
with
the victim mentality lately has seen such a surgence?
I'm sure we ebb and flow through everything, right? We ebb and flow through cultures. We had the sexual revolution in the 60s, 70s, 80s. And now we're almost having like an anti-sexual revolution amongst the youngest people where like people can't date. People are really lonely and like people aren't even willing to have the conversations about sex. I feel like we probably ebb and flow through this.
You know what's interesting? I saw on Twitter the amount of people who thought the founding fathers were heroes or evil. The majority of Gen Z believed that the founding fathers were evil versus heroes, versus boomers who almost all thought they were heroes. It's interesting to see just how culture has shifted and how people's mindset is going towards let's focus on the bad.
You're also more rebellious when you're younger too, right?
Okay. All right. You know what? I'll give you that. That's something I didn't think of.
Yeah. You always got to push back, be against the man.
That's true.
Everything's, we're fighting the system.
This clip is brought to you by our sponsor, Aura. Have you ever Googled yourself or a loved one and been absolutely shocked by all of the information that's publicly available online? Well, I did it recently, and it was really scary to find private information that was readily available on public data broker sites. Well, if you're scared about something like this too, that's where our sponsor, Aura, comes in. Not only does Aura monitor your personal data across the web, but it also helps you opt out of those invasive data broker websites. Plus, they offer identity theft protection with up to $5 million in insurance for your whole family, financial fraud alerts, and even a VPN to keep your online activity private. Personally, I'm not willing to leave my information and my family's security vulnerable, and you don't have to either. Go to aura.com/icedcoffeeclips to try it out for 2 weeks for completely free. And literally in just minutes, Aura will let you know if your personal information is exposed. Head to aura.com/icedcoffeeclips to see why it's worth it and protect what matters most. Seriously, guys, it's just 2 weeks completely for free. Try it out with the link down below in the description or aura.com/icedcoffeeclips. Thank you to Aura for sponsoring this podcast.